Hey everyone, so today I want to talk about a project I've been working on for the Magpie Pirates collective. So the Magpie Pirates is a music and other art collective originally started by Simon the Magpie, who you might know here on YouTube, and it's expanded a lot, and it's kind of just a community based around a lot of different types of art. One of our big things that we do is collaborative albums as a group. So we'll come up with a theme or topic for the album, and then everyone contributes a track into it, and then we end up with a sort of mix of very different styles and interpretations of whatever theme we've chosen. So I've contributed to a couple of them in the past, but it's been a little while, so I'm working on one for the most recent project which we've got, which is the working title for it is Memory, Reflections, Past, Future, etc. So a pretty vague title. The idea is kind of just anything that evokes that sort of feeling of a memory, or looking back at a moment or whatever it may be. So this is what I've got. The main way that I've taken that theme and worked with it is based on interpretation of like the structure and like making it sort of run through like the changes that might occur in a memory. In terms of actually composing the parts, it's not necessarily so much interpreting that, but I focus more on the structure with that, and then just came up with different parts that work well together. So let's start by focusing on the structure, because that's mainly where that theme comes through. So I might put this down in this corner. We've got the bass line, which is what opens things up. So it's actually a bass pad, and it's using a plugin known as Capsule, which we'll get into more in a little bit. But I've just done a little bit of processing on it, and it's this very sort of ambient pad type sound. So this is what we've got, and it kind of opens up over time. And it just plays these different notes for around a minute, and then actually right on a minute, after 25 bars, this drum loop comes in. So it's kind of a shift in terms of the feeling. It's very much more structured, because this opening part was not recorded with a metronome or anything. So then we come in to things starting to pick up. It's still got a very sort of chill vibe, certainly not too intense or anything. It just starts picking up, and then this extra sliding element comes in. And then once we get to this end bit here, things start to shift a little bit. So what happens here is it's a big shift in both the feeling and the intensity. So the drum part gets a lot bigger. There's these cymbals coming in and that feel, which we haven't had so far, and it's just the actual sounds of the individual drums themselves are a lot bigger and more intense. So it gets more intense, but there's also no other instruments, so you really focus on the one thing. So I feel like that kind of creates a very different a very different mood there, which is what I was going for. Just a little bit of a different feeling to sort of have a sudden shift, which I think is kind of what I was trying to evoke in terms of remembering like a series of events, sort of starting off very slow and not moving too much, and then slowly building up, and then something sort of sudden happens, and then it falls back into the same type of thing as before, the same instruments, the same sort of chill vibe, but everything's just a little bit different after this event happens. Things start to slowly build back up as things get more close to what they used to be, and then some more elements come in again, bringing things back to something more familiar. You'll notice the actual melodies that were in each loop of it stay exactly the same, so nothing's changing, it's just adding things in. Then we bring in this up again, and then we go back to what we used to have. So things have slowly become more familiar, and then we get back to what we were used to, but everything's changed just a little bit. We've got these extra bits. This arpeggiated thing has gone from these sort of individual offbeat notes up to a full arpeggiated going up and down in octaves. So it's just getting a little bit bigger. So overall, it kind of goes from this really slow section, and then things start to pick up, and it kind of falls into a sort of habit, and then there's a big shift things change, something big happens, and then everything goes back to what feels like normal, but nothing's quite the same, and then it starts to go back to what it originally was with a couple of additions. So it kind of has that feeling in terms of the song structure of very much something happening and just affecting everything. And obviously in music, a drum fill doesn't have to change everything that comes afterwards. Obviously, it's just kind of an interpretation of the theme, I guess. But yeah, some of this is admittedly kind of just analyzing it retrospectively, but I definitely was thinking about some of this when I initially thought about the structure, how I want it to change slowly and then have something happen and have a bigger shift change. So as I was saying, the actual mood of it is very sort of minimal, chill, and that doesn't really change within the track except for this bit, as I keep mentioning. So now, hopefully, we've sort of explored a little bit about the sort of structuring, songwriting, and interpreting that theme. Let's take a little bit of a look into the actual elements. And also I realized I said this bit before, but you couldn't see the screen, so I was talking about the big shift part again. Anyway, let's take a look at some individual elements. So I'm just going to run through them in order of where they sort of come in. So start with this bass pad element. I'm just going to put this up here. Sorry, I keep moving it around. It's just depending what I'm showing, it needs to be in a different spot to not hide anything. So we've got the bass pad. Now the plugin for this, as I said before, is called Capsule. Now this is a pretty interesting plugin in my opinion. I made a couple of videos using it almost a year ago actually. But the idea is it's kind of, there's a whole synthesizer, sampler, a fully developed instrument behind it, but all you have access to is these 8 parameters and a bunch of presets. So if this sounds familiar to you, you might be thinking about the circuit tracks, if you've heard any of my very extensive videos about it. And that's how I got this. It came for free at a certain time with the circuit tracks. So you can buy packs for it, and you can also subscribe to just have all the packs. But this particular pack, which is known as, let me see, this pack is called Neon. It's a sort of, synthwave 90s type sound thing. So this particular pack came for free with the circuit tracks at a certain time. You kind of just receive software every so often that you can have for free just for having like circuit tracks, which is a great thing that Novation does. But anyway, that's what this plugin is. This preset's called All My Memories. It's a pad sound, but obviously I just shifted it down to a lower octave and played this thing in. This is actually not even in the same key. This is in C, and the rest of it's in E minor. So a bit of a difference there. But another way to just make it feel like a big shift happens when the drums start to come in and things start to pick up a little bit. Now let's talk about the drums actually. So this pattern is a sample. It's just a loop, and I have it in here somewhere. Let me just find the right one. There we go. So I'm not sure where I got this from, but just some kind of drum loop. So what I did was, obviously I slowed it down to match the tempo of 96 BPM. So you'll notice if I just solo this, it's a 2-bar loop. The very first one is a little bit different, but after that it's just a 2-bar loop. So instead of having this little roll happen every bar, this little roll, I've changed it so I cut it out of the first time and then made it happen the second time. So in order to cut it out, I took this section here and pasted it over here, which is why there's a very quiet hi-hat there, which you can hear a little bit. So that's how I got that extra little sound there. I didn't want it to just have a gap, so I just made that little hi-hat sound fill that space. Anyway, that's how we ended up with this sort of 2-bar loop rather than a 1-bar loop. That pretty much continues throughout the whole track except for this one section here. So this is the real drum groove and real drum feel. So I took the last bar of the groove, which is its own feel in a certain way, and then also the feel, which is the big one with the cymbals, chained them together, added a few bass notes, which is how we get that sort of 2-bar fill section. And then the drums, as I was saying, pretty much stay the same throughout the rest. So now let's move on to the other bass element, which is the bass guitar. The two basses don't interact at all, but yeah, move on to this next bit. So start by looking at the instrument that we're using for it. This is ABPL2. This is my primary bass guitar plugin that I use. It's the Ample Bass P2 Lite. So Ample is a company that makes replications of a lot of different instruments, different types of guitars. They have a free guitar, a free acoustic guitar that is, as well as this bass plugin. So they're very good plugins, and these are kind of the primary bass and guitar plugins I use. So, that's the full bass line you heard. So I kind of wrote a 4-bar phrase using these little double notes here. And then going into this descending phrase. And then just a little riff. And then I did the same thing, but just changed up the notes a little bit to have that sense of movement. So you end up with an 8-bar pattern, although it's not actually that complex. It's kind of 2 bars of these sparse notes, and then a descending line, and then a little riff, and then the same thing again, but just playing it a little bit differently. And then the last time, instead of playing that little riff going up and down, it just descends again, which goes well into the next bar. Now, the only time we actually hear it go into the next repeat is at the end here, from here descending into the next one. But the one time it does also happen is right at the start, because that's the pickup line. So if I just scroll down here, that's what this pickup is. So that's where that comes from, and then it also occurs at the end here. Now here it does go into something different rather than going back into the next repeat. But as I said, over here in the final chorus, it does actually do that. So that's it for the bass in this section. Within this fill part, it's just playing a couple of notes. So E, the root note, and then a B, which is just a 4th above. Not really any serious thoughts gone into that. It's just I picked some notes that sounded good together. Now in the this section here, I'm going to talk about this when I get to the keys because they're composed to go together. So let's focus on the lead for now. So we're getting back into capsule here. This is another preset known as Creamy. And it's just playing this fairly simple melody, just starting on the root note, descending down, going down to this note, and then plays a descending line, which climbs back down to that root note, which is where it starts again the second time. Fairly simple melody there, but it complements everything else quite well. You didn't need anything too complicated, nothing moving too fast, because we already have the bass line, which is playing some fairly, ear-catching riffs here, as well as the arpeggio going on here when we get to the later section. There's quite a bit going on, so I don't need anything too complicated, just something easy to listen to. It's almost like a bit lyrical with the slow-moving long notes. So let's get into what is going on here. Same idea, just some very sort of slow-moving notes here. Just individual notes, almost acting as a pad. Just providing some supporting harmony to go with it. So that element is actually quite simple. There's not a lot going on in terms of the composition. It's just a fairly simple and easy melody. Now let's move on to the keys. So this is just playing a counter melody to go with it. This little descending line, sort of in the parts where, well, just listen to it. It's the part where this melody starts to descend. This counter melody also descends, but it's going at twice the speed. So those two working together creates the sense, because you'll notice in the melody, the first half and the second half are exactly the same, but the counter melody, it goes further down on the second repeat, which is what allows them to work together to create that sense of actual movement throughout the 4-bar loop. So it's originally, I composed this descending section to be at this double speed here, but then I decided this sound, because of the tone it has, works better like with this slower moving sound, and then this sort of more like piercing sound works better for this little descending line. So in terms of the synth here, this is Helm. This is a really great synth that I think I've mentioned before. I've never really gotten super into actually sound designing on it. So this preset I'm using here, I did actually make myself. It's very simple. It's just triangle and square, a sawtooth and a square, cross mod a little bit, fairly short envelopes obviously, and then just a little bit of distortion and reverb. Really not a lot going on, but it creates a very simple sound. Yeah, not really a lot to say there. Just a good sound that works together with what's going on here to create that sort of more piercing sound for that descending line. Now, as I said, this section is where it gets a little more interesting. So I started with just on the beat descending sounds. So this was originally up here or something. And this would have been here as well. But we'll put everything back. I just made it a little more interesting by putting this on the offbeat before, adding this little slide down, and then having this be on a lower note rather than up here, and then also pulling this back onto that offbeat. So that sense of syncopation creates a lot of movement that wouldn't be there otherwise, which is just a great way to add a little bit of more interest into a very simple melody. Now the bass, is doing the exact same thing. It's doing what was originally going to happen, how it's just going between notes, and you'll notice it's going E, D, C, and then down to A. So it's playing the same descending notes, but it's alternating the octaves, which is kind of the idea, how it's not just following exactly what's happening, making it a little bit more interesting, feeling like it's going up and down, but it's still following the harmony exactly. So again, nothing too complicated is happening here. Following the notes, except for at the end where it just does this little descending line. It reaches down to an E, and then at the start of the next repeat, it'll just jump back up to the octave above to go back to this E. So kind of just providing some extra notes to go along with it. That kind of summarizes these sort of primary melodic groups: the bass, this lead and counter melody, which is the keys, are very much the main melodic elements. The next one that's kind of associated with them is this one, which is called carp. It is very much an arpeggiated sound. Here it's just playing these descending offbeat notes, which really lines up with how there's a lot of descending melodies going on here. Creating that sense of sort of everything moving in the same direction, falling downwards. And then later on, it does get into this more arpeggiated thing. But in terms of the synth, this is a very interesting but very simple car plus strong synth. All you have is the decay and the damping of the sound. Very simple, created by, I'm guessing that's Nathan Blair. I believe I got it for free off of Gumroad. So if you're interested in having access to these sounds without necessarily having to know all the science behind it, grab this plugin. It's great. I use it all the time, and it's really easy to get a lot of different character out of just these two tone controls. So it's great. Plus you get to look at these beautiful dolphins. So that is kind of what's going on with this melody, just descending. Later on, we get when this sort of B section starts to build up, we have this same thing happening here, how it's going up and down between octaves, but it's following them. So like how the bass follows the notes of the keys, but switching octaves and staying very simple progressions, this arpeggiator follows the notes of the lead, but doing the same thing, switching octaves and maintaining very simple progressions. Now, obviously, you can't really make a progression much simpler than this, so there's not much changing there. But the octave switching and the faster speed is the same thing. So it's kind of got this idea where these are your two main elements, and then you shift this one down and simplify it to get the bass, and you shift this one up and simplify it to get the arpeggiator. So it creates a lot of cohesion there, which is what makes it sound so smooth when each element comes in, because it just matches really well with what's already going on. And so the keys come in, and then its counterpart comes in, and then the lead comes in, which is something a bit new, and then the counterpart for that comes in, which feels really smooth again, and the arpeggiator comes in last so that it can easily lead in to this arpeggiator, which is kind of the only change from the previous version of the chorus. Obviously, we've got these new things, but all of the above stuff is exactly how it used to be in the original chorus. This is the only thing that was there before but has actually changed, which is why I wanted the arpeggiator to come in last as a sort of lead-in to how this is different now. So previously, this would be playing an E here on this offbeat, so I just switched it to play fifths up and down, going across, like, following the same notes going downwards. So it's, harmonically, it's achieving the same role, it's just filling up a bit more space. The final element to talk about in terms of melodic stuff is, it's called slides and glides here, but it's a noisemaker preset, which is a very good synth by Tao. It's an emulation of the Juno synths. I don't really know. I'm not big on vintage synths, but that's what it is. It's just a good synth either way, regardless of whether you care about where it comes from. But it's just playing a simple portamento line, going up and down. That's all it really is. It just complements everything really well, just adding something else in. So yeah, then that's pretty much it for the primary elements. The only thing we have yet to discuss are these two extra bits that come in towards the end. So these are just some additional percussion sounds. We have these hi-hats. I just grabbed a bunch of different hi-hats. I had Chunk of Mr. Taylor, created a random melody. They're all from this drill sample pack I downloaded, which is really not the style here, but they work great. They're just very short, like non-intrusive hi-hat sounds, which worked out great for what I needed. Adds a bit of texture and randomness, and it's over a 4-bar loop, so you don't really notice the repeat, especially when you can only hear it 4 times. It's hard to notice any repeat when it's so random. And then there's also the beatboxing, which I'm not going to solo because I'm not really trying to embarrass myself. It's just there to add another layer of different sounds, different, more percussion build up. You can definitely hear it, it's pen to the left, but I don't know, it adds something. Yeah, that's about it. I put a lot of thought into the sort of structure here, and I think it's turned out really well. I'm very happy with it. I love the way these different elements work together. This is possibly one of the better songs I've made ever, which I guess isn't saying that much. If you want to listen to this, I mean, I'm definitely going to release it at some point, probably on Bandcamp first, but eventually on streaming services as well, whenever DistroKid, whenever I get it sorted out. It'll probably be part of some other compilation with some other tracks in a similar style. But in terms of the Magpie Pirates compilation, I'll probably make a post just in the community tab on my channel whenever the actual collaborative album comes out, just so you can go stream it on Bandcamp via there, even if I haven't released my own version yet. But yeah, let me know what you think. If there's anything that you think could be improved, it's not too late. It's not going out tonight or anything. I still have a week to submit it for the collaboration as well. So if you have any feedback to give, please do. But yeah, hopefully you have enjoyed this video, found it interesting, and hopefully enjoyed the music as well. If you have, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing to my channel for more content like this. I've been doing a lot of these sort of track breakdown style things lately, focusing on different aspects of composition, songwriting, and whatnot. So if you like what you've heard, make sure to subscribe. And if, as I said before, if you have any comments, feedback, or suggestions about the song or the video or anything else, let me know down in the comments. And other than that, thank you very much for watching, and hopefully see you in the next one. Bye.